This presentation is really intended for those who haven't invested a lot in automation yet and are still in the research phase of their project. Also, as I go through my presentation, you'll notice that I won't hit every bullet point on my slides. While I wanted to share everything, there just won't be enough time here today to cover it all. So I decided to leave the bullets in the slides with the hope that you could reference the recording later on, and of course feel free to reach out and ask me any questions about points that I don't cover as I'm going through this. I'm Debra Lewis. I am the Web Content Manager at OCLC. I've been at OCLC for a long time, and I've served in a lot of different roles. And the variety of roles all were part of my training for a technology that I didn't even know existed when I started at OCLC. But in 1996, I started working on websites, and it's been websites ever since. Now, if you don't know anything about OCLC, it's all about innovation and cooperation among libraries and really helping libraries promote their services and benefits in this wired world. It's a membership organization with about 25,000 member libraries in 170 countries, and we do have offices around the world. OCLC has played a leading role in helping libraries move from the card catalog to the computer to the web, and will continue to help libraries move to whatever technologies come next. The web team, the websites here at OCLC are really supported by multiple small teams. The web team that I manage is myself, a translation coordinator who's also our Chinese translator for both simplified and traditional, 2 project managers, and 2 web editors. If you look at the graphic here, the web team is central to the support of the websites, but there are specialized teams for special content at OCLC.org. So we have a couple of people who handle the research website, a small team of people who work on the support and training websites. There are marketing specialists who work with direct marketing landing pages, ordering, and email content. And then we have a set of regional editors, the number of which vary from region to region, but generally the regions have very small numbers of staff resources at their disposal. We have developers that we depend on to help us with our content management and other supporting applications. That's our enterprise application development section. We have multiple designers, but we're guaranteed just 1 FTE of their time, and we depend on them a lot. And we also have a server management division at our disposal. So you can see this is just not a one-person website. This is a well-supported enterprise. The web team and the designers report to the Executive Director of Branding and Creative Services, who has the final approval in all website projects. The website section that my team focuses on most is what we refer to as the marketing and membership website. And that's the part of the website content that really supports the traditional customer journey, from becoming aware of what OCLC is, learning more about it, learning more about the services we offer, and helping the libraries actually purchase or become members of OCLC. Just some basic statistics here. We have 15 sites, a worldwide site, and then 14 region-specific sites, 8 languages, about 1 million page views per month, but that's total across all of our sites, research and support. There are around 13,000 pages of unique content on our worldwide site. The regional sites generally have smaller subsets of that content, anywhere between 3,000 and 10,000 pages. So you can see there's a lot of content that we were looking to have automation help us manage. Besides our internal staff costs, we have external costs for tools that support the website. We use Adobe AEM as our CMS. We use Google Search Appliance, Site Catalyst for our analytics, and for our translation budget of usually below $180,000 a year, we have our agency, Interpro Translation Solutions, we've been working with for quite a while. Clay tablet connectors to get our content in and out of the content management system and to the global site system. And then we do contract with a global site support contractor as we continue to learn more about the system. This may be the most helpful slide in the deck for you because it shows how we've optimized our site structure to centralize branding, localize the messages and offerings for other regions, and provide translation. So the way this works is the content in the content management system goes in at the worldwide level. 97% of it goes in at the worldwide level in English. It then rolls out to all of these regional English sites. Then the managers of those sites can request translations that are relevant for their markets. In Europe, the Europe site rolls out again to English versions of the United Kingdom, Germany, and Dutch sites. The German and Dutch English versions of the site are not published. They are used only for localization purposes, and then translations are requested to publish to the German and Dutch sites. But all of the localization appears at this English level. So the content message is made right for the regions before it goes to translation. Now, this is a model of our automated translation process. And what really drove us in setting up this particular model is we wanted to be able to choose our agencies now and future separate from the provider of the TMS. So we're connecting Adobe AEM to global site through Clay tablet connectors that then can go out to our regional, our agency, our internal translators, and anybody we choose to contract with in the future. So have we reached happily ever after? No. Technology moves at the speed of technology. So we need to be able to change as that wheel spins around again. But I can tell you how we got to where we are now. And like most stories with happy endings, it began with pain and desperation. So this may be where you are now. On the production side of things, there's way too much manual processing. You spend more time finding a creative solution to a problem than creating new content or managing your site strategy. You use features of your CMS in ways that they were not originally intended. And there's no scalability in languages. Every time you want to add a new language, it's a huge, painful, long manual process. The turnaround for day-to-day edits just keeps going up, and it's affecting your relationship with your internal clients. Maybe your distributed authors have given up and relinquished their editing rights. So whoever it is that's central to supporting your content is getting more and more work. And that means more and more of a roadblock. And your team's stress has increased. Well, when that happened to us, we knew we needed a plan. So in the plan, I had 3 steps. I thought with 3 steps, no matter how huge they are, if I have 3 steps, I can manage it. So first was to automate the file transfer process with our existing translation provider. And as you go through your research, you're going to read a lot on the web. Don't spend all of your time on the web. Make sure you get out there and see people. And one of the best decisions we ever made was to go to a conference and attend a workshop, Buying and Implementing Content Management and Global Translation Management Systems. And it was there we met someone who actually helped us find Clay Tablet. Now, Clay Tablet Technologies is really a way to send out one file from your system and get a nice, neat return of multiple files for each translation of that file and get them back in your system. So we were actually working through FTP at the time. So it was a nice baby step for us to get something in place that helped just a little of the pain. But we knew we had to do more. The first lessons we learned, even with this baby step, was that getting it out was easy. Putting it back into the system was not. But you can have quick wins if you have a workflow review and automation. If you know where there are particular points in your workflow that you can add things on a short-term basis, then that'll help you out a lot. And we knew from this that translation and localization were going to drive the requirements for our content management system. So step 2, as far as the requirements and selection was concerned, I knew I wanted a consultant. This was a big project. It really was a multi-year project. This RFI process alone would have increased the workload on OCLC staff who, as we already know, were pained and desperate. There was a high rate of growth and merger within the localization and CMS industries at the time. And so I wanted somebody who was immersed in that world. When you're busy with the day-to-day running of your processes, it's so hard to analyze all of the information you get when you're doing your research. You can download and you can read papers, but actually trying to put it all together is something else. If you can get somebody who is immersed in that world, and I think it really is going to help you out. I'm not sure I would ever recommend that someone take on a project of this size without the help of an expert. And one of the other benefits of having a consultant that I found was that he served as an objective third party who could help build our stakeholder consensus. And that became more important as we went on. If you do hire a consultant, you might think of auditioning him or her before you go for the longer contract. This gives your stakeholders a chance to meet the person, make sure that they're going to fit in with the culture of your organization. I know that this helped a lot for me. It made me very aware of the advantage of having an objective third party on the project. So our consultant, who was Andrew, by the way, actually came in and did a workshop for us. We'd already drafted requirements, and we've been floating those around, trying to add a little more detail, trying to make sure we'd covered everything. But when he came in and did this workshop for us, he gave us a common vocabulary to use that made it a lot easier for people to ask questions about workflow, to ask questions about functionality of the system. He made sure we were all on the same page and had the same understanding of what content management systems could do. And he pointed out some needs that had not been addressed in our requirements. So when all was said and done, we ended up with 2 very strong finalists at the end of our selection process. And we decided to go with DayCQ. Now, remember I told you about the mergers and acquisitions that were going on at the time? Well, DayCQ became Adobe CQ. And Adobe CQ has rebranded now and become Adobe Experience Manager. But because we started with it as CQ, it just is still our favorite name for our internal authoring system. Now, the lessons we learned as we went through the CMS selection process was that there are limits in configuration. You're never going to find a system that is absolutely perfect. And a lot of the time, no matter how many demos you have, no matter how many calls you make to ask questions, once you sign the contract, once you get the software, you're going to face some surprises. And you just need to be flexible and figure out how to make things work to your advantage. Don't expect your vendor to arrive with a plan and a detailed process. You need to be ready to drive this yourself. I know there were a couple of early meetings where I felt like we were just sitting in the room staring at each other, waiting for the other group to start first. You know, where do we begin with this? What do we do first? So make sure that you have your list of requirements, what your priorities are as far as implementation, and you can lead off that meeting and say, here's what we want to tackle first. And as you go through this, don't forget that the CMS and localization world, it's a really small one. People move from firm to firm and role to role. So you're going to be meeting them over and over. Be firm on the issue, but soft on the people. One of the first decisions we made when we were discussing implementation was to use an automated migration process. We went with Vamosa that was acquired by T-Systems during our process. And they scanned our published pages and did an audit of our sites that really helped us prepare content audits to use in our redesign and rewrite discussions. They educated us in the process of automated migration so that we knew what we could expect. And they gave us a list of cleanup projects to tackle before our migration project started. So here's just an example of one of the reports they gave us that shows a distribution of our files across our information architecture. So you see that nice long line there. Those are our support files. You can tell we had a lot more support content than anything else on our sites. But those reports really helped us plan for what content we might want to rewrite or rebuild as we move things across. There was a breakdown of pages by MIME type. It helped us identify duplicate structure. And it really showed us which tags we had used and which tags we had defined but really never found a use for. So lessons learned. Be sure you do a full audit, purge, and archive before the migration so that you're not moving over content that you really don't need. And trust the migration vendor when they tell you there is a tipping point between the time you spend on migration scripting and a return on that investment. Towards the end of the project, we were trying to really get granular in our scripting requirements and moving content over, when I think there was a point that it would have been better for us to rebuild some pages from scratch. Don't expect to automate everything. Make sure you leave some of that migration budget for contract help, for manual cleanup. Depending on how big a site you have, how many multiple sites, how complicated they are, you might want to implement in phases if you can. Our implementation strategy actually evolved based on what we were learning about the system as we went along. We knew that there would be a lot of overlap in the functionality of sites that use the OCLC.org domain. So we knew that if we started with the smaller sites and built, we were still using building blocks then that would benefit us on the main site when we rolled that out. One mistake I think we made, and we were advised against this, but we really wanted to do it because the site design was fairly old, was about 7 years old. When you migrate from one system to another, wait until after you've done the migration to worry about doing a redesign or a lot of content rewrites. We didn't, and it really piled on a lot of stress. There was still rewriting going on after we'd migrated and a lot of cleanup. Our original migration schedule stretched to 2 years, but we did get everything rolled out the way we wanted to. We used an agile project management process, and so I think for the first 6 months after our launch, we continued to add features, fix bugs, and really continue to improve the look and feel of the site. Because we did put off the migration of the main site until the end, we ended up with a lot of duplicate work. We were managing the existing site in the old system, and because the content had already migrated, we had to keep that content in the new system up to date and in sync with the old one until we got to launch. And there was about 6 months of that overlap. So there was an awful lot of work there. So step 2, got to check that off of my list. Step 3 actually was going on at the same time as we were looking at the CMS and implementing that. So a lot of this happened in parallel. We decided to go with Global Site as our translation management system. It's open source software and so is not tied to a contract with a particular agency. And again, that freedom of being able to go to whatever agency or internal translator we wanted to is very important to us. Global Site automates the file transfer and the review process. And while it is open source, and there's a lot of management of Global Site that goes on here in-house in my team, we do invest in a support consultant for Global Site because we just continue to learn the intricacies of the system. So great, we completed all 3 steps, but there was a lot going on between the lines. One side effect of automation is that there can be some trepidation among staff about how their roles are going to change. If you have anybody at your institution, your organization, who specializes in change management, make sure you ask for their advice on this, because you won't hear about it. There's a lot of undercurrent of stress that goes on that people don't voice, and sometimes addressing that head on will keep a lot of problems from coming up. But automation seldom replaces people. It simply changes what they do in the process. So one of the things that the web team did was to look at the roles. In one of our meetings, we just broke it all down and said, okay, in this new process, who does what? How does this change what we do? Well, the JIRA ticket that we have for the web team for updating content, adding new content, have dropped from 180 to 200 per month to 75 to 90 per month, thanks to a renewed and mostly enthusiastic distributed authorship. The distributed authors now, and we probably have about 100 people at OCLC who are profiled to work in CQ. What distributed authors do is they do the day-to-day updates and content, page edits, tagging, that kind of thing. For event management, they're not only creating the events, but they're adding expirations when those events are over. They're making sure that any collateral or links to recordings are put in those events so that they continue to be important references for people. And they'll roll out any new and updated pages that they've been working on so that the regions know that there's new or updated content. Now, the regional editors and authors localize, delete content based on based on notes that are in the files as they're rolled out, or they can have heads up if it's important new content that's coming out. Chances are we've sent a message to let them know that there's this new content, what the point of it is. If we've had a draft of the content, we give it to them ahead of time. They will initiate the translation process, review the translations when they come back from the agency, and they might actually create new pages that are specific to their own regional site. This gives them control for their regional site that they just didn't have with the old system. And it's something that they were asking for loud and clear when we started this project. But because we have the centralized branding, it does keep some consistency among the sites. So here's the list of web team tasks in the new world. As you can see, there's no lack of things for us to do. Thanks to automation, we have more time to focus on website improvement and not just maintenance. We're doing a lot more usability testing now. We can look a little more at SEO. We're doing more with site metrics and analysis. It's really nice to be able to do things that we've known have been important for a long time. The strategy things that it's so hard to find time for. As far as planning for our improvements, we have a no surprises policy here at OCLC Marketing. So we work hard to keep all of our website stakeholders in the loop. We have meetings, a lot of meetings here. A lot of people laugh and say it's too many meetings, but when you have a distributed set of teams who are managing content, it's important to make sure that everybody knows what's going on. And if you can do it face-to-face, all the better. So we have regular meetings with enterprise application, that's our set of developers, our design staff, and our other site managers. We have the weekly web team meeting so that we can talk about what's going on and what our next install is going to be about. We have regular meetings with regional editors, not as many as I'd like. Our first one actually was just a few months ago. We launched in March, and our first meeting was a performance review of the rollout and translation process. We wanted to make sure that Global Site and CQ were performing the same for staff that were working remotely in other regions as it was working for the authors right here in Dublin, Ohio. We have another meeting coming up in January. We'll be talking about content revamp and other improvements to the site. And we'll always continue to work on making the workflow as seamless as possible and as easy for everyone as we can. On my wish list would be a semi-annual face-to-face meeting with the regional editors, because I really do think there's a lot that you share with a person when you're meeting with them in person, when you're going out to dinner with them. It's just that kind of coffee station talk that you don't get when you're in a conference call. We also publish a newsletter for all of our authors in CQ. It helps them stay on top of what the latest improvements are, and it also helps us maintain a little more consistency across the sites, just in style, in use of components, in building pages, and that kind of thing. I'd say that one of the roles that the web team has really taken on and done a great job with is supporting the distributed authors. We spend a lot of time on the phone with people, helping them through problems, documenting the features and functions in CQ to make sure that when we're not around, or if it's not Dublin business hours, that our authors still have access to how-to sheets, videos, anything that will help them do their job when we're not around.
The first question here is on your translation budget. And the comment here was, given your number of pages, your translation budget seems low, and can you explain why and how do you manage the budget?
Well, it is low. One of the things we're not translating is support content. There's very little of that right now that's translated. So almost all of our content that we're translating is marketing. And since we launched, the regions have started to truncate their sites to focus more on products and services that they want to get right out in front of their members, instead of being the larger repository for information. So for librarians, it's a kind of culture where you want to do your own research, you want to find your own answers, and sometimes it's hard to pick up the phone and talk to somebody because you want to get the information yourself. And we've always supported that. We've had a lot of content on our websites. And what we're looking at now is truncating that a little bit more so that there's less to manage and so that there's less to translate.
You mentioned something about automation not being a job killer. And it seems to be the perception that automation is a job killer. And how did you manage that change? And actually, is it a job killer? I think, how did you manage that change?
I just have not found it to be a job killer anytime a new technology comes in. There's just, you may not have more content on the website, but there's going to be more websites. There's going to be different uses for websites, different applications that are built. And you need people who are going to write the requirements for that. You need people who are going to manage the implementation, do the testing of that. I just haven't found so far that anybody's job was in jeopardy from automation, because there's still the management of the automation to be done. And there are usually jobs that just aren't getting done because you're so busy with the manual process. We're using translation memories, which are helping support and cut the cost of our actual translation. And just in the processes, the fact that we have more time to devote to other tasks, we're getting more out of staff.
Can you elaborate a little bit on why, like when you changed CMSs and changed your process, your web structure, multi-site structure, what impact that had on your URL strategy? I remember from our meetings back then that was actually a huge undertaking.
It was. It's always painful to change URLs because you know that your users are going to get lost. You know they've bookmarked their favorite pages, and suddenly you're changing the URL pattern on them, and that's always difficult. Additionally, during this move, we had an English site for the Middle East that got really very little activity and little support. So we dropped the Middle East site, but that's when we picked up the Europe site. Before that, in the old system, we'd had the UK, Dutch, and German sites, but we didn't have that higher level for Europe. So, so all of those URLs changed. We also went to a BCP 47 practice with the structure of the URLs for the language and region. So there was a lot of URL angst. We have a URL mapping database that we use here at OCLC. It's homegrown, and it sends out it's a smart 404 basically. So when a hit comes into a page that would normally give a 404, that's sent to the database. If it's accounted for in the database with a regex filter or a one-to-one map, then it redirects the person to the page in the new location. If it can't find anything, then it sends out a true 404 message. And that served us really well, but it's still very hard to change URL structures.
How long did it take you?
I'll bet from the time we started the business plan, just the business plan, to say we need to move to a new system, to the time we made a decision on the new vendor, it was probably a year.